So during the show yesterday, my colleague at the Yes Network, Jack Curry, tweeted out that Roki Sasaki had informed the Yankees that they were not going to be able to get his services as he comes over from Japan as a 23-year-old flame-throwing pitcher. The Mets also subsequently heard the same thing. The way this whole thing has been handled by Joel Wolfe, who is his agent, it seems like an episode of The Bachelor. People are being handed roses. I mean, why couldn't you just come out and say, tomorrow's the day that you could do it, and maybe he'd say, well, I'm giving them a break, because then, once they know they're not in it, they can spend their international money. But what would one day mean? This looks so contrived. It looks like a really bad reality show. Okay, the Giants are out, and the Yankees are out, and the Mets are out, and the Giants are out, and the teams that remain are the Padres, the Dodgers, and the Blue Jays. I don't get the Blue Jay thing. Don't get it. Why would the Blue Jays still be alive in a team like the Yankees and the Mets aren't? The Blue Jays have not been able to sign their best player, Vlad Guerrero. They can't get anybody to take the money to go play in Toronto. Toronto does not look like it's a team on the come. They might lose Guerrero. They might lose Bo Bichette. And he's considering them over the Yankees and the Mets? That's odd. I think it's going to come down to the Padres and the Dodgers. And I think the Dodgers will end up getting them. Now, if you're a Yankee fan, I'm sorry you can't sit back and be upset because the Dodgers are hoarding all this talent. You can't do it. That was once you. So the Dodgers right now have the secret sauce. They play on the West Coast, more adjacent to Japan. They have good weather. They have a super team. Seems like they don't care about money. Sorry. You've got to come up with another creative way to make yourself more attractive. You just do. Yamamoto turned you down. Now Sasaki turned you down. Now the slugging first baseman Murakami is going to be a free agent at the end of this year. I know the Yankees would love to have him. That's why they didn't want to sign a long-term deal for a first baseman. Are they going to be able to get him, or is he going to end up on the West Coast? Something to consider. But again, Yankee fans, don't make yourself look bad. Don't whine and cry about how the Dodgers are building a super team. Because the best way for Yankee fans to look at this, let all the great players go to the Dodgers. Let them all go. You know who that affects? It affects the Giants. It affects the Padres. It affects the Diamondbacks. It affects the Mets. It affects the Phillies. It affects the Braves. That's who it affects. You don't have to face the Dodgers till the World Series. And once you go to the World Series, you got a chance, even against a team that might be far superior talent-wise. Because as great as the Dodgers were last year, and the one thing that I'll push back about, I know a lot of people don't want to hear this. You look at the numbers for both teams in that 5-game World Series. The Yankees and the Dodgers were almost dead even, and the Yankees led in most categories. And when people say, well, the Yankees were overwhelmed or overmatched by the Dodgers, nonsense. You're just trying to fill a narrative. The Yankees should have won Game 1. They should have won Game 5. They gave those games away. They weren't overmatched by the Dodgers. Now, you can say the Dodgers were ravaged by injuries. They were. Their pitching staff was a shambles, and they got it done. I'm not taking anything away from the Dodgers at all. Not a thing. Please, don't look at it that way. But don't say that the Yankees had no chance against the Dodgers, because you're lying to yourself. You're absolutely lying to yourself. It's just not true. You don't bring in Nestor Cortez in Game 1, and you bring in Tim Hill the way you should have, you might win that game. You don't give up that 5-run inning where Aaron Judge drops a ball that he would make 1,000,000 times. Anthony Volpe commits an error. Garrett Cole doesn't cover first base. All things that are part of the Yankees, I get it, so you can't excuse them for it. But that was really wild stuff that happened. And after all that happened, Yankees still had a 6-5 lead and blew it. But don't say they were overmatched. Don't say they got blown away because it was 5 games. Because I've heard Met fans tell me, well, the Mets put up a bigger fight against the Dodgers because they won 6 games, the Yankees won 5. Yeah, look at the games the Mets lost. They got blown out. The Yankees didn't get blown out. Again, look at the numbers. The Yankees did not get blown out. So let the Dodgers accumulate all the talent they want. And let all the talent in the American League go to the National League. You know what that means? Yankees every year will have a chance to be in the World Series. Every year. You can't be afraid of the American League East right now. Who's pitching for the Orioles? What do the Blue Jays have? Have the Red Sox done enough? Yankees are the best team in the American League. They are. So if they do what they're supposed to do in the playoffs, they'll get to the World Series, and then you face whatever team's there. But all those teams in the National League, they've got to worry about the Dodgers because the road to the World Series goes through L.A. Can you beat that team? And you can beat that team. In a short series, anything could happen. Over 162, I believe the best team always shows itself. But then you got to play all these playoff series. You got to play all these rounds. Dodgers are world champions, right? But they're down 2-1 in a best of 5 to the Padres. They almost went home in the first round. Dave Roberts would have been fired. Would be looking at the Dodgers in a completely different way. So let them sign Sasaki. Let them get every great Japanese player. If you're the Yankees, yawn, stretch, and go, we have to worry about the American League. We'll get to the World Series and we'll figure out a way to beat them then. If you're the Mets, you got to be concerned. If you're the Padres and the Diamondbacks and the Giants, by the way, the National League West is a beast. Be concerned about the Dodgers. The teams in the West have to play them 13 times a year, and then we'll probably have to get through them in the postseason. That's when you worry. You don't worry now. These are things that deserve to be discussed, but we're not going to pick them apart and parse them to a fine powder. All right, number one, the way the Cowboys handled the McCarthy firing. So they had a period of exclusivity where they were talking with McCarthy. They had to know that they were not going to re-sign him. They knew his body of work over 5 years. They knew they wanted to get rid of him. But instead, they turned down the opportunity for the Bears to interview McCarthy. Now, it doesn't hurt McCarthy because the Bears' job is still open. He's going to probably end up there anyway. But by playing this little dance of seduction, or not seduction, what Jerry Jones did was stop his own team from interviewing coaches that he might want to have. So the teams that are still in the playoffs right now, he could have interviewed them via Zoom, at least got a foot in the door. Now he's going to have to wait. If one of those coaches that he wants to hire is on a team that goes to the Super Bowl, he's going to have to wait until February to do that. So not only did he hurt McCarthy, and it was a bad look, it was an awful optic, he hurt his team, he hurt his organization. Now, there's been some dalliances with Deion Sanders. I want to see that happen. Deion is an alpha male. And I want to see Deion Sanders have to deal with Jerry Jones. They supposedly have a great relationship. That was player and owner. Now you think Deion Sanders is going to want the heavy-handedness and the intrusiveness of an owner who has a press conference every day, it seems like, has a weekly spot on a radio station in Dallas, and makes comments after every single game. You think Deion really wants to deal with that? And how do you solve the problem of getting Shador and Shiloh on the Cowboys? Are they going to trade their quarterback, who they just signed to a long-term big money deal? Is that what they're going to do? We'll see. Now, the conflicts of interest in our business are just amazing to me. They're amazing that they're allowed to go on, and the public can't do anything but accept them. We've talked about, Mike Tannenbaum conducting, all these interviews for the Jets head coaching job and still being on ESPN. And I'm sure he's not giving the inside info that he knows because he's in the room when these people are being interviewed. That doesn't fit. Doesn't make sense that ESPN is allowing it. But the bigger conflict is Tom Brady. Tom Brady has essentially pushed the owner of the Raiders, Mark Davis, to fire the coach and fire the GM. Now, Tom Brady owns about 5% of the team, but he has a lot of sway. And the Raiders, since firing Antonio Pierce, interviewed Ben Johnson, the coveted offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, who had no intention whatsoever of interviewing for that job. But because of subtle pressure from Tom Brady and the respect that everybody has for Brady, he did agree to have an interview with the Raiders. Tell me how that makes sense. Brady's doing the Lions game this weekend. How does he actually talk about Ben Johnson and the offense that the Lions are running without at least giving the disclaimer, by the way, I am part of the ownership group on the Raiders, and I kind of made sure that Ben Johnson... It's so blatant that it's a little upsetting. It's unbelievable that the NFL is allowing it. Instead, they're worried about, well, he can't be at practices or whatever. He can't criticize officials. This is terrible. If this goes on, he cannot continue as the lead analyst at Fox. He just can't. It doesn't make any sense. You want to be an owner? Be an owner. You want to be a broadcaster? Be a broadcaster. And you're not a poorly paid broadcaster. You're making $37.5 million a year. And you can't even give it your all. You can't even tell the truth. And I'm one of the people, and I think I'm in the minority, who believes that Tom Brady's actually pretty good on the air. Everybody just gives him a hard time how awful. He's not awful. He's good. He knows more football than any of us will ever know. And he's disseminating that information better than he has since the beginning of the year. Kevin Burkhardt's done a great job with him. Brady's good on the air. But you have to decide, what do you want to be? You want to be an owner who has a say, or do you want to be a broadcaster? You can't be both. We've all heard the story about the fan at the Eagles game. His name is Ryan Caldwell. So there was a Packer fan there with her husband, who's an Eagle fan, but she's wearing Packer gear. And Ryan Caldwell just excoriates her, calling her the worst words in the world. Well, he works for a place called BLT Partners or BCT Partners, whatever, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, in this day and age when everybody has a phone and everybody can videotape you, he's been outed. But that's not what I'm going to talk about here. What drives somebody who has a life, has a job, has a family, to act like a complete animal in a public setting like that, to talk to a woman like that, doing nothing other than rooting for her team? That's not your team. What is inside the mind of a man that would do that? That can't be somebody who's right in the brain. It can't be. It can't be somebody who's right in the brain. And there's so many of them out there. I know Philadelphia gets a bad rap, just Philly. It happens everywhere. Everywhere. Whenever I take my family to a game, there's always some big mouth slob yelling things that he wouldn't yell in his house. So he's never going to be allowed back in an Eagle game. See if he loses his job. But what a uncultured animal. Forget about, you don't even have to be cultured. Just be a human being. This woman's doing nothing to you, and you're calling her the worst things possible that you could call a woman. So you see this story? Caitlin Clark has a stalker from Texas. His name is Michael Lewis. He was sending her all these terrible messages, and he was in Indianapolis, where she is spending most of her off season. She plays for the Fever anyway, because her boyfriend is an assistant coach on a team that plays in Indy. So this guy, Michael Lewis, who came into the courtroom today and was yelling things, guilty as charged, like a complete, I mean, there's something wrong with him. So he was ordered held on $50,000 bail. He can face 6 years in prison, a $10,000 fine. But here's the deal. There's something wrong with this man. So if they give him 3 years or whatever the case may be, when he gets out, he's going to do the same thing. Don't you think that this guy has something that's a screw that might be loose that maybe he has to be put away for a long time? Because we've seen that. Remember the actress Rebecca Schaefer? I mean, stalkers will go out and they will find you and they will kill you. Why shouldn't they be behind bars